In a previous video, I found this TV unit in my charity shop for £2. I took it home, took it apart and made one project out of it. There is still a lot of wood left, so I decided to go ahead and make a coffee table out of this. This is the top piece of the TV unit. It's 24mm thick, it's quite big. At first I thought it's flat, but it has a little bow to it, so I'm gonna have to deal with it later. To secure it on CNC wasteboard I use screws. That helps to keep the piece in place and make it flat for my CNC operation. The plan for this project is to engrave a dinosaur fossil in the middle that is embedded in the wood, so I can then fill it with epoxy resin and have a flat surface for a coffee table. This is 3.175mm compression bit that will cut a profile and define the size of the coffee table. So to deal with the bow in the board, I made the size of the coffee table smaller, hoping that will help with the bow. The square areas you can see on the corner of the profile, they are for later use for the tabs. Over here I'm just using straight edge to mark a center of the piece, so I can start engraving my 3D model from the center. Here I am securing the tabs that will hold a coffee table. Later on that will be cut off using CNC machine. I start with a roughing path using 3.175mm compression bit. Ideally I'd like to use bigger bit, but this is all I got in my workshop. So there we are, starting the engraving. After roughing path we can see rough lines of the T-Rex fossil head. Next operation is a finishing path using 3.175 ball nose bit. This is quite big engraving, so I don't need very fine details, and this bit is good enough, in my opinion, of course. This 3D carving took about 4 hours to complete. This is one of the biggest carving I've ever done on this channel. If you want to see another carvings I've done, there's gonna be a playlist link in the description below the video. So this is it, 3D carving is done, that's the result. I think it's just enough details to show the beauty of the model. I go around the edges with detail sander. Using a blowtorch, I burn the wood. quick sand out with the sanding pad attached to the drill. I need to check if the cord is plugged in, and it wasn't. What I do now is pretty much unnecessary step, but I found this out later. What I do, I try to sand down the finish. Orbital sander was enough, so I swapped to this beast. The step is unnecessary because later on I will be using a CNC surface bit to surface the epoxy resin over spills. Again, burning the wood at the moment is unnecessary because I'm gonna remove all the marks later on while surfacing the slab. But it's good to do this because you can see the preview of the project, and I'm actually impressed how it looked. It's time to mix some epoxy resin. I use little kitchen scale to get the right proportion. It's 50-50 mix. I wasn't sure how much I need to fill whole project, but I always can mix up a little bit more if needed. This is my homemade stirring paddle to quickly mix epoxy. While it's thoroughly mixed, it's ready to be poured. The following day I can come back and see the results. The resin is cured and hard. I can surface the slab. The bit I'm using here is 1 inch surfacing bit. It's nothing special, something from Amazon, but it does the good job. At first I wanted to surface the board manually using just my keyboard. I quickly realized that it's taking too long, and I programmed the job in OpenBuild software to do this automatically. This is after first pass, manually surfacing the board. Over here I put the dust shoe on to let the machine do the job for me. Each pass is 0.5 millimeter, and I go as deep as 1.5 millimeters, so it takes 3 passes to complete. It's time for sanding. I go through grids from 60 to 400. I grab the blowtorch again and start burning the wood. I'm trying to be creative here, and all the burns supposed to imitate cracks in the board. I spray water to raise the grain and have a preview of the epoxy. I'm happy with the results, and I don't think it needs sanding more. The final step on my CNC router is to cut off the tabs that were holding the table. I still use small 3D tabs to hold it in place, and cut them off with multi-tool later on. After unscrewing the board, you still see that bow in the main board, but my table is smaller size and it remained flat, or flat enough for me. For some reason, my profiling bit didn't go all the way through the material, so I'm using my multi-tool to just cut the last layer of the wood. Next step is to remove all the tabs and this final onion skin layer using flash trim bit on my router table. This coffee table will have picture frame around the edges. All I did is grab offcut of the board and start trimming it down so I can have pieces to create a frame. I use my homemade mitre jig from my table saw to create mitres. All 4 pieces are ready, so we can start gluing everything up. It is the following day. The bottom of the table still had the holes from dowels and fixing that were holding the old TV unit together. I decided to use drill and plug method to deal with this. I drill the holes to the right size. I used the offcut board from the same unit and a plug cutter to cut a corresponding plugs to the holes. While inserting the plugs, I'm making sure the grain orientation is the same as the grain orientation of the board. To make a wood filler, I'm taking wood dust and mix it with wood glue. After filling few little holes with my homemade wood filler, I'm going to take a coffee table to my CNC router and surface the bottom side of the table. The idea was to use double-sided tape to secure the table to the baseboard, but that didn't work very well. I had to use different ways. I do the push test here and it failed. Double-sided tape didn't work. I decided to use scrap piece of MDF to lock the table in place. That shouldn't go anywhere now. While the CNC is doing his job, we're going to focus on table legs now. I bought the set online. They weren't very expensive and they are pretty good quality. They come with a bracket and felt pads. The only problem with them legs is the finish. The shiny lacquer they use, it's not my style and it's not gonna go with the style of the table. All I'm doing here is using a blade to scrape off the existing varnish. It takes only a few minutes and it's quite satisfying. Just listen to the sound. After scraping is done, I use 240 sandpaper to remove remaining finish. And it's time to use my blowtorch again. Using old scrap of wood, I made this jig and put it on Lazy Susan so it's easier to apply the finish. Before the finish, I blow all the dust from the legs. And this is underside of the table. Off camera I burned it and it's ready for applying a finish. I use spray on semi-gloss lacquer because it's easy to apply, and this is what I had in my local DIY store. Applying this finish, I use the fan next to it to blow out all the fumes. That really helps. And this is it after applying finish. I'm gonna let it dry and finish the project. CNC made jig. And there you have it, all 4 legs attached. I use this jig to space them equally. I also add this hook, so if you don't want to use it as a coffee table, you can put it on the wall as a wall art. Alright, let me take this coffee table outside and take some beauty shots. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed, hope you took something out of this video, and I'll see you on the next one.